Welcome to All Home Care Matters, the show where we discuss all things home care, with discussions on important age-related matters and topics. Brought to you by Enriched Life Home Care Services, the #1 rated home care provider in Michigan by Top Rated Local.
Hello, and welcome back to All Home Care Matters. If this is your first time visiting us here at the show, we want to say thank you for taking time out to be with us today. We appreciate how valuable everyone's time is, and that's why we try and make each episode here at All Home Care Matters something that will hopefully matter to you. Today, we are honored to welcome the founder of Positive Aging Communities, Mr. Steve Gurney. Welcome, Steve. How are you today?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. So, Steve, let's talk a little bit about your background and what led to the creation of the Positive Aging Community.
All right. Well, I have been doing this for about 33 years. And what led to this was when I was in college, my grandfather needed a nursing home, and I observed firsthand how my family had to go through that challenging life chapter. And it struck me as odd that there wasn't a guide out there to objectively help my family understand all the different options that were available to them. So when I graduated from college, I put together a guide. I didn't think I was going to be starting a business. I just wanted something on my resume to help me get a better job, first job out of college. But here I am 33 years later, and we're still publishing the printed guide, but we also have a variety of digital offerings as well.
Wonderful. So I understand, though, you were involved in a project where you actually lived in 5 different senior living communities when you were in your early 40s.
Yeah, this is
what inspired that?
Well, so here I was. I got into this in my early 20s, and fast forward 20 plus years later, and I'm 43 years old, and I'm regarded as this expert on senior housing because I'd helped thousands of people make the move. I'd interviewed hundreds of people. I'd visited over 500 senior housing communities. But it really struck me as odd that I'm an expert at something that I'd never experienced myself firsthand. So in an effort to be more authentic to our community members and our readers, I decided to make the move, and it was an absolutely amazing experience.
What did you learn from the experience? Let's start here. What was your preconceived notion before the experience, and how did that change after you had the experience?
Well, there's a couple things here. First off, for my entire career, I've been hearing one phrase on a daily basis: I'm not ready yet. Mm-hmm. So especially when associated with senior housing. So what's the problem with these places was one of my first questions. But more important, when I moved in and I did these temporary moves, my goal was to see, can these be homes to people, not older people, not people with disabilities, a healthy 43-year-old. And other people have done sort of immersion moves into nursing homes where they don't need a wheelchair, but they live in a wheelchair, and they, sort of immerse themselves in the prescription plan of a specific resident. I wanted to live in these communities as a healthy 43-year-old. And the takeaway is these are some of the best neighborhoods that I've ever spent time in. And the biggest blind spot that I had, and this is after visiting over 500 of these communities, is how much the residents care for each other. So let's say that you've got 100 apartment assisted living community. No matter how great the staff is in that community, there's no possible way that the staff can provide 100% of the caring that goes on in that environment. And it's true. The residents care for each other. They take care of each other. And it's sort of, when I speak about this afterwards, somebody brought it up. It's sort of like you're sort of everybody's in a boat that you don't necessarily think you want to be on, but when you're in that boat, you come together in a more meaningful way. And so when I would move back to my idyllic suburban neighborhood, it really made me realize how, while I love my neighbors and we get along, the level of caring for each other is nowhere near what it is in your typical senior living community.
Right. And did I understand correctly that the project inspired some professional athletes living in these retirement communities?
Oh, this is one of the coolest things. Is while I was in my first community, there was a minor league baseball player that was being hosted by a community in Ohio. And I was like, this is brilliant. And I formed a connection with that player and with the owner of that assisted living community. And when I finished this little project, my main goal was I'm going to reach out to all the minor league baseball teams here in the Washington, D.C. area where I'm based. And I'm going to get them all connected up with the local senior living communities. Much to my surprise, all the baseball teams were for it because they're always looking for host families to host the players. To my surprise, it was very difficult to find senior living communities that were open to giving an apartment to a player for the season, even if they were like at 50% occupancy in a brand new community. So it's kind of shocking. But I did that for a few months, and apparently the word got out in the physical trainer world because a year later I received a call from a trainer that said, I have 3 Olympic medal-winning women's soccer players, and their contract says they can't live in somebody's basement, and but they would be open to living in a retirement community. And we got these ladies into it's Ingleside at King Farm, and it is in Rockville, Maryland. It was a few miles away from the training facility. It was an absolute amazing experience for them, for the residents, and for the community at large. They would have these fan nights at the retirement community, and hundreds of little girls would come with their soccer balls to get them signed. And when you think about it, those families would probably never set foot into that senior living community, but now we're opening their eyes to how wonderful a senior living community can be for older adults in the community at large.
Does the women's soccer still do that?
No, they don't. Unfortunately, that community is at 100% occupancy, and it's interesting. Like the community in Ohio, I believe what they do is they basically just hold an apartment during baseball season every year, and they just don't book it. And it's a little bit easier for an assisted living to do something like that than a life plan community is what Ingleside was. But I tell you, the main reason like why I like sharing the story is because there's a stigma against moving to an age segregated community, which is why people say I'm not ready yet. But when you insert professional athletes into a senior living community, all of a sudden it's like, wait, wow, okay, I get it. But if a pro soccer player can live there, I guess I could too.
Sure. What's some of the biggest topics of interest for your community members?
So every week we have live and interactive discussions on a wide variety of topics. And this started with COVID. We've done over 350 of these, and we've got a very engaged and active audience. And there's 3 primary topics that seem to rise to the top. Whenever we put them out there, they get more turnout. And the first one is solo aging. The second one is anything that is dealing with affordability or how to pay for these care as we grow older. And then the third is the topic of ageism, like sexism and racism. ageism is a real problem, and it really engages our community in some thought-provoking discussions.
What's your thoughts on aging in place versus, say, a community versus making a move? Because we encounter countless families here where we're at, and one of the biggest issues or things that come up with these families that we encounter are they put their mom, they put their dad, or they put themselves in assisted living thinking they're going to get care, and that's not really the case with assisted living or even independent living. And oftentimes they end up having to hire services to go into the community now to take care of their loved one or to take care of themselves. Do you find that a lot?
Absolutely. And that, I think, is, there's a variety of reasons for that, but it really is a travesty because it's, the cost can become insurmountable if you're paying an assisted living cost on top of home care. Right. And it is, it's a challenge that I hear about probably on a weekly basis from one of our community members. But to answer your question, my thoughts on aging in place versus making a move. The first thing that I like to tell folks is that, well, number one, we've all seen the AARP study that says, 70 to 80% of us prefer to stay exactly where we are or in the same community if our healthcare needs change and we want to age in place.
Right.
But the first thing that I like to talk about with our community members is creating a plan and really, look at the home environment, look at your supportive network, think about if your healthcare needs change, what would you do and who could support you? And one of the challenges is a lot of times folks say, hey, I want to age in place, but then they don't just take it the extra next level and create an aging in place plan.
Right.
The other thing is that since most of us want to age in place, it's okay to make that statement. But one of the challenging statements that many of us make is we announce to the world, don't ever put me in one of those places. And this presents a lot of challenges for adult children. And I get this call on a regular basis where, mom is now, may have some signs of dementia. It's just not, without a lot of support, it's not safe staying at home. And because the adult daughter is trying to do everything she can with the budget that she's got, it's she feels obligated to meet that demand when there can be situations where making a move can create a safer environment. Now, the last thing that I think is really top of our mind, especially because of the pandemic and the recent Surgeon General announcement, is that loneliness and isolation is not healthy. Right. And aging in place is wonderful if you've got the support, if you've got the engagement. But if aging in place and you're lonely and isolated, changes either need to be made to that home environment or the benefit of moving to another community. And it doesn't need to be a senior living community. Perhaps it's an apartment that has a more walkable space and is in a suburban urban environment. But making that move, if it can create a more healthy, engaging environment, then that makes sense. But a lot of this really it's having choices. And that's sort of one of my things is that, yeah, we all prefer to age in place, but give yourself the choice if situations change and make a plan.
Right. I just say, age in place if you can do it safe.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So let's make Steve king for the day. If you could create a community for seniors or older adults, what would it look like to you?
I love this question, and somebody asked it to me at a conference a few years back, and if I could build a community It would be a life plan community, which is also sometimes referred to as a CCRC. And for those of your listeners that don't know what a life plan community is, it combines independent, assisted, and nursing all on one campus. Now, the concept is that a person can move in independently and be cared for through their lifetime. Now, in this life plan community, let's say Mr. Smith wants to move in, and he meets the income qualifications and he's ready to go. He's got a couple of friends there. The requirement that I would put on Mr. Smith and any independent resident that is in that community is that you need to specifically volunteer a portion of your time, let's say 10 hours a month, in the assisted and nursing sections of this life plan community. Now, the value of this is that imagine if we've got 100 independent residents, we now have literally an entire new workforce that is supporting the healthcare needs of our assisted and our nursing residents. But more importantly, one of the things that I've seen over the years, not at every life plan community, but at many, is there is a segregation between the independent and the assisted and the nursing. So you might go into a life plan community and you'll hear residents say, "Oh, I don't want to be on the third floor,"
Yeah.
But someday, the reason they moved in there is someday they might need that third floor. And the most important thing is to bring the community together and not segregate those residents that might have some additional healthcare needs.
Yeah. I know a family we had helped years ago, their mother was in assisted living, but the hallway she was in was the last hallway of that assisted living. And at the end of the hallway was the locked doors for the memory care. And I mean, it stressed her out. It caused her anxiety because, every day she's like, I'm not going down there, and it's just, you need to have it separated, but still be able to offer it. Because I think, like with this family, I mean, it really grieved their mother to cause her, emotional, physical, and mental issues.
So one of the things, one of the ways to combat that is to connect the residents with the memory care residents. So there's doctors, lawyers, professional athletes are in memory care. It's me and you. None of us have a crystal ball. And being afraid of looking at the door and going in there and volunteering and having lunch with the residents there, you're not going to catch it, but it's going to help you understand that these people are people too, and we need to support and be with.
Normalize it.
Of all, ages and abilities.
Yeah, normalize it. Don't make it so scary. So you have some unique guidance, though, for those shopping for senior living communities. What is Steve's unique guidance?
Well, it's so one of the things, and this, it stems from some of the things we're talking about. There's so many ageist viewpoints, and I understand why, because listen, the only legally segregated housing right now in our society is age segregated housing. You can build a community and you can segregate out young people. Now, we're not segregating for evil purposes here. We're segregating to take care of this segment.
Yeah.
But this is why people are resistant to making the move. One of the reasons why people are resistant to make a move to one of these places. And so oftentimes when I'm talking to families, I will say, look, you're taking mom out to look at a few places, or you're going to look at a few places yourself. And I know this is something that might not be comfortable, but what I want you to imagine is you're not going to an old folks home. You're going to tour college campuses. Okay. Now, I want to put you in the mind of a typical high school kid who's touring a college campus. They don't care about the square footage of their dorm room. They don't care it doesn't have granite countertops or that it's, a real estate transaction. They're looking usually at two things. One, and the most important, is the other students. The other is the faculty. If they're a good student, they're concerned about that. And so thinking about the students are the residents, the faculty is the staff, you know, get to know the people that work and live in the walls. It's not as important as how beautiful the community is. So that helps a lot of people, because in general, there's a negative stigma of senior living and a very positive stigma of going to a college campus. And the experience, when you talk to somebody who's lived in a community and made that difficult move, oftentimes the way they describe their community is very similar to the way a college student describes living in college.
That's a great analogy. What do you suggest to people or recommend who are focused on aging in place? I know we've touched on several things, but how would you summarize it?
Well, I think I had mentioned earlier, make a plan. But one thing that a lot of people don't do, and we're currently involved in a pilot project on this, is manage, build, and intentionally review your own personal village. Okay, now what I mean about the personal village, a lot of times we collect friends, family, loved ones over the years, but we never really, put it down on paper and look at where the strengths and the weaknesses of that village are, and communicate with the members of our village. If I had some changes in my healthcare, would you consider doing this? And I'll help you too. And when you visually document this, oftentimes what you find is that there are strengths and weaknesses. And with a lot of older adults that may have had robust villages at points in their life, just because people have moved and passed away and their lives have changed, their village becomes a lot smaller. And that's where, when we can sit down and look at that village, we can figure out where we need to build it up and where it might be enhanced through paid services like a home care agency or a gutter cleaning service or a home maintenance, somebody who's going to shovel the snow if it snows in your region. Right. So the really intentionally looking at who is out there. These are generally the unpaid support that we have. And especially if somebody is what I refer to as the caught between the cracks group, where they don't view themselves as affluent, but they don't qualify for subsidies, having that unpaid support group can really extend the savings that we've got to take care of ourselves and our loved ones for a longer period of time.
Well, and I agree with that fully, Steve. And I know in our communities here, it seems like every mile or two, there's a new senior living community being built. Now, for viewers and listeners who may be in more rural areas, that's not necessarily the case. I know I have family in the South. They have one small senior living community. When I say small, it's 50 beds, 50 rooms. That's it. What do you recommend to people who are looking for placement or looking for a senior living community, but there's none in their area?
For those folks, they've got to get creative and come up with ways to age in place. And It is possible, and it can be purposeful and it can be robust. But again, it takes a plan. And one of the growing trends based on surveys of older adults is that people are more open to home sharing now. Older adults, people over 65, are more open to home sharing, and there are websites out there that help connect older adults. And that's another great solution. It may be your best friend and you share a home. You're able to take care of each other a little bit. And then let's say that in the future, home care support was needed. One home care provider could come in and provide care to 2 or 3 people. And it minimizes that social isolation that we were talking about earlier as well.
What's your own personal vision of yourself as you navigate your lifespan?
Well,
are you constantly thinking about it because of the work you do, or?
I am, and I tell you, I mean, this is I love that question, because if there's one thing that I want people in our industry of senior living to think about is there, what would happen if your healthcare changed? I think a lot of times those of us who work in this profession, we almost feel like we get a free pass because we've helped so many people. We're gonna, escape all of this, but none of us have a crystal ball. And I guess my main thing that I think about is that I want to have the widest field of vision and the most amount of choices that I possibly can. And I also want to look at, as I navigate the chapters of my life, look at it with a sense of humor and a tremendous amount of flexibility and curiosity. What I mean by this is, I remember years ago, this guy walked into my office. He was selling some services, and he kind of limped in, and he sits down and he goes, "Man, I threw my back out. I had a doctor's appointment. I may never be able to play golf again. My life is over." And I was chatting to him, and I said, like, I get it, because my life is sort of currently in several buckets, and a lot of it is extreme athletics, that it just takes one change, and I may not be able to do the sports that I currently participate in, but I've got to have the flexibility to reinvent myself and find purpose. And it could be getting into art or stained glass or something that might seem more sedentary that I might not want to participate in right now. But there's wonderful communities around these hobbies and activities, and it can really open your eyes to new skills and purpose.
Last question I want to ask for you, Steve, is, what do you feel is the most important thing for us as a society to address when it's related to aging and longevity?
I really feel very strongly about addressing the topic of ageism, because I think we tend to use the word aging incorrectly, in that aging begins on the delivery room table, not with an AARP card. And we need to stop sending people disparaging birthday cards with black humor. We need to celebrate the fact that we're navigating these chapters of our life, and they're going to look different, and they should look different. I mean, my life looks a lot different than I was a teenager. I'm not stuck back in, riding my skateboard around when I was 13. The life experience that I've gained is really helped me help other people. And we need to wipe out ageism, and we need to celebrate these chapters of life. And those of us in the profession, we need to be here as guides to help people live purposeful lives, even though they may have had some devastating healthcare changes. Figure out how we can help these folks and connect them to others.
I agree fully. And, I think our society, unlike the rest of the world, is one where ageism seems more prevalent than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably Hollywood. It's Maxine with Hallmark cards.
Sure.
We're seeing some radical changes, and I mean, you think back. I'm 57, but I think back to the 70s, and just think about sexism and racism and how far we've come there. And I think as we start to focus on ageism, we're going to see dramatic changes there as well.
And I think you're absolutely right. And I think it's with, work like you're doing to help raise the awareness and, change the stigma surrounding aging. So, and I just want to thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure getting to speak with you, and thank you for all the tremendous work that you're doing.
Oh, you too. You're doing some amazing work, and it's just awesome seeing how large your community is. You've really done some amazing work in bringing together people that are interested in these topics.
Thank you so much, Steve, and we'll talk to you again in the future.
You bet.
Have a great day. Thank you for joining us today here at All Home Care Matters. All Home Care Matters is here to help families as they navigate these long-term care issues. We invite you to visit us at allhomecarematters.com, where there's a private, secure, fillable form where you can give us feedback, show ideas, or if you have questions. Every form is read and responded to. And remember, you can listen to the show on any of your favorite podcast streaming platforms or watch the show on our official YouTube channel. Just make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. We'd also like to say thank you again to Mr. Steve Gurney for joining us today. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next time here at All Home Care Matters.
Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to you joining us again on another episode of All Home Care Matters. To learn more about the show and to connect with us, visit us at allhomecarematters.com.